group of scientists from the Kronos Academy and their expedition to Peru to learn more about the mysterious and unknown past of this huge country. Peru used to be the golden country to be conquered, as well as a great and unexpected source of wealth for the 16th century Europeans. This country was also known as the land of the Incas, population devoted to the sun, whose empire was one of the widest ever made by man, with a long and glorious history. Since then, everyone's imagination was captured by the huge heritage of the Incas, made up of glorious monuments as well as stunning natural beauties. Peru is thought to be a mountainous region, but soon you are surprised by the arid and wide deserts, the impenetrable forests, as well as the rich and green valleys. The Spanish settlement in the 16th century, as well as the succeeding political upheaval, have totally raped this country, deleting both the historical memory and the archaeological ruins. The ancient population in Peru, just like all great civilizations, have after all managed to leave permanent and unquestionable traces of their existence. Archaeologists and scientists from all over the world are now bringing to light the magnificent historical past of Peru, even though several decades later than the best-known Afro-Oriental civilization, this uncheesing process is fated to rewrite not only South American, but also the world history. As it often occurs, you leave with the excuse of uncovering a mystery, and in the case of our expedition, we had a large number of surprises and satisfactions. From the very beginning, our expedition had been organized to unveil the recent archaeological findings within northern Peru, a largely unexplored area once populated by the mysterious Chachapoyas, also called the Cloud Warriors. The north of Peru is still the wildest and the most remote area of this nation. The beauty and extreme charm of small towns such as Cajamarca do not absolutely prefigure the road's roughness and the numerous difficulties faced on the northern side of the Andes. But they are well rendered as soon as you get to the Amazon's region. Broken roads, where it is recommended to use a suitable car, and where also public transports venture, but not without drawbacks and challenges. The roads rise up and up, passing by gorges and endless crevices. Our instrumentation often shows an altitude between 3,000 and 5,000 meters. At this juncture, even talking can feel like too much effort. A few miles away, we found the first evidence that made us think that we were on the right path. As soon as we left the valley of Cajamarca behind us, we got the glimpse of our first target in between the pristine landscape. They are the necropolis of a pre-Inca population, preceding the Cajamarca culture, maybe of Wari influence. Hundreds of galleries and single niches, 8-10 meters in depth, looking like windows, were dug in volcanic rocks, where the leaders and their loved ones were buried. They have a 50 or 60 centimeters high rectangular and quadrangular entry. According to some of the evidence, originally there could be gravestones, decorated by symbolic bas-reliefs. By tradition, the Incas once conquered the local tribes, destroyed the rock, and wore the niches for other purposes, changed them into a barn, in their local language kolka, and for this reason redirected the heats against the wind, and created more tunnels to constantly keep them fresh. Through some windows you can get to dark, mysterious and endless galleries, where you can also find altars for propitiating rites. It is impossible not to be surprised by the lack of respect shown by the Incas in this case. They have not hesitated to turn these places of worship and commemoration in a sort of fridge, although irrationally efficient results. Entering the Amazonian region of Peru also means being in touch with the habits and the reality of these populations. Still, nowadays the market, with its ever-present barter and sale laws, is the main meeting place of society, still tied to agriculture and livestock holdings. It is easy to be struck by this world of thousand colors. In this outdoor crowded bazaar, you could find anything, and the generosity of this land is clearly visible thanks to the nice weather. Peru has the greatest variety of potatoes and seeds in the whole world, exotic fruit all the year round, and any kind of vegetables and meat. Their diet, as well as their economic system, is llama, alpaca and camels based. We are shocked by the poor hygienic conditions of these markets. Here, the local community's antibodies are definitely more trained than ours. The Urubamba River, flowing in the endless valley that it created throughout centuries, seemed to follow our path once the earth of impenetrable kingdom of Chachapoyas. The close and confidential relation that these people used to have with the mountains and their rocky faces is clearly visible on a first glimpse. The site of Revache can be reached only after a long climbing on 800 meters of elevation. It is made of two groups of mausoleums, built in the caves hollowed out in rocky faces of a large gorge. They are square buildings with ceilings, roofs and large ledges. We are stunned by its red and cream-white colored walls, which faithfully reproduce the model of ancient dwellings. The mausoleums of Revache are community vaults, as highlighted by the bone remains therein contained. But in this region, it is not the only example of rupestrum vault. In Caraya, clay sarcophagi are still well preserved and can be found at the highest point of an unreachable cliff. In 1893, the Swiss scientist Adolphe Bandelier noticed for the first time the strange funerary monuments known as purumachos. In 1970, it was explored and pointed out by the archaeologist Kaufmann Doig. This place is located in a narrow enclosure, which leads to Lamud and Caraya, to the northeast of Chachapoyas, and can only be reached after a long and impervious walk, between cliffs and karst sinkholes. The accuracy and the devotion applied by Chachapoyas to make these funerary works let us well understand the trust they put in the netherworld. All fruits and the honors of sacrifices made in life would have been fully enjoyed after death. That is why these people showed off their social position before everybody, beyond virtue in the sight of the world, with great care for the jewelry, ornaments and decoration. A real oddity in this case is represented by those scholars in Bollywood robe. We think that the intricate series of knots that we see were a sort of tax code, an identification. Each single knot, its straw stated and represented a merit, a work made, a possession, and any titles within the community. The initial astonishment for the Chachapoyas tombs, built in skills of both phases, is soon overwhelmed by the great surprise we were caught out in visiting what probably was their most important and impressive stronghold, Cuelap. Cuelap is not much visited due to its position absolutely out of the most common tourist itineraries, but it is supposed to become a coveted destination like Machu Picchu, even though it is not easy to get there. Hours and hours of off-road vehicle and more than an hour walking. This great city, now made of ruins of the Chachapoyas civilization, was built as a huge fortress, approximately in the 5th century, and it is placed at 3,100 meters of altitude on the top of a mountain that emerged from the side of the Urubamba Valley River, in Quechua language, Uchubamba. Various buildings showed diamond-shaped friezes with walls niches and enigmatic structures whose usage is still unclear. The large entrance converge in narrow walled-up alleyways that allow one-by-one passage. They look like sloping funnels, strategically built to avoid enemies' invasion. The fortress of Cuelap was built by Chachapoyas, also called the Cloud Warriors, before the invasion of the northern Andes by the powerful Wari Empire. The experts argue that the construction of this extraordinary work involved a stone volume 3 times more important than the Great Pyramid of Cheops in Egypt. According to the beliefs, in a subterranean room called the inkwell, where priests used to keep humus, llamas, and practice human sacrifices. A large number of legends and assumptions were made on this mysterious community, because many findings and many writings describe people taller than those native of these mountains, blonde, red-haired, with blue eyes. That is why some theories underpin the arrival of the Vikings and population from Northern Europe in historical periods previous to the discovery of America by Cristoforo Colombo. It's only a conjecture, but for sure this area of Peru is still almost unexplored. This is shown by all the latest expeditions, including ours, nearby the huge city called Gran Vilaya. We penetrated this wild region, despite many trip difficulties, including those due to frequent heavy equatorial rains. The archaeological remains came to light almost everywhere in a region that's considered to be wider than 100 square kilometers, incredibly vast. Thousands of buildings, temples, fortifications to be discovered. The paths and tracks to reach and investigate these remains are not being completely mapped, but scholars have already been talking of how all this can disrupt most of this world history. There is nothing left for us to do but bringing it to light. We went to the west of the Pacific coast to find any further confirmation, where we have exceptionally had the opportunity to visit the places of an excavations recently carried out. We have managed to interview Walter Alba, the most important and prestigious South American archaeologist, to know the opinion of who has dedicated his whole life to study the past of this country. We owe him most of the discoveries that today make Peru one of the most important cradles of civilization.
El norte del Perú tiene un aspecto fascinante porque mucho antes que los incas conquisten estas tierras, aquí surgieron ya muchas culturas y pueblos que desarrollaron obras majestuosas, arte, que vencieron el desierto para crear una extraordinaria civilización. En el mundo son conocidos los incas, que constituyen uno de los grandes imperios de la antigüedad. Pero ellos llegaron aquí al norte del Perú recién alrededor del siglo XV. ¿Qué pasaba antes? Muchos pueblos, muchas culturas, pirámides erigidas en el desierto, joyas maravillosas encontradas en las tumbas de las culturas pre-incas que surgieron en este suelo, son argumentos suficientes para venir a descubrir el misterio y esplendor de estas antiguas culturas. El Museo Tomás Rale de Zipán presenta y expone al mundo los resultados de un descubrimiento sensacional: la tumba de un gobernante de la cultura mochica que vivió y reinó en esta región alrededor del siglo II a III de nuestra era. Esta tumba tenía que estar expuesta en un museo en la misma región donde fue encontrada. Construimos el museo, hoy está convertido en un atractivo turístico, pero esencialmente hemos recuperado el mensaje de que este gobernante debió quedar en su mismo territorio. En la región norte del Perú tiene una variedad infinita, no solamente de monumentos y de misteriosas culturas que están apenas siendo conocidas. En la costa, los mochicas, en el desierto, en la selva, los chachapoyas que logran penetrar hasta la montaña, hasta las zonas selváticas. Estas culturas que tienen la fascinación del misterio porque están apenas siendo conocidas, las estamos descubriendo. La tumba de Zipán acaba de descubrirse, aparece el Gran Vilaya, presenta una visión diferente, pero también crea mucha especulación. Tenemos aquí todos los indicios de que hace 5.000 años en el Perú se forja una civilización y hoy el Perú queda claramente ante el mundo como un centro de creación de la alta civilización. El norte tiene monumentos arqueológicos fascinantes. La Huaca de la Luna, Zipán con sus tumbas reales, joyas que nos muestran el esplendor de los antiguos gobernantes, cuela en una ciudadela enclavada en la montaña en medio de las neblinas. Las zonas de Cajamarca son culturas que surgieron y que tienen hoy cada vez una antigüedad mayor. 5.000 años de historia pueden ser recorridos en esta región. Este museo pretende presentar lo mejor que tiene la cultura mochica. Las tumbas reales de Zipán nos muestran el esplendor y el misterio de los antiguos gobernantes. Hemos descubierto estas tumbas, las hemos salvado del saqueo y la destrucción para presentarlas al mundo. Visítenos.
The Modern Museum of Zipán was recently inaugurated and officially opened to the public in the suburbs of Chiclayo. Its founder and current director, the world-famous archaeologist Walter Alba, opened us for the first time the doors of the new excavations and allowed us to resume findings and treasures still foreclosed to television. The archaeological sites are carefully protected by the Peruvian state to avoid inestimable treasures to be stolen, as it happened in the past to thousand sites. This is how once appeared the pharaonic complex of Tucume and Sipan. Also in this case, pyramids and majestic buildings are arranged in order to faithfully reproduce constellations and celestial bodies. They are interesting combinations and strange similarities which civilizations separated by oceans, thousands of kilometers away, which give much to think. The pyramids built with earth, clay and straw today look melt, lifted by the wind and rain, crumbled by the unceasing effect of the Niño, that all along draws the morphology of the whole coastal side of the Pacific Ocean at these latitudes. The archaeological complex of Tucume is approximately 33 kilometers from Chiclayo. This archaeological site of the Moches culture, also known as the Valley of the Pyramids, is one of the most important of South America. In its center is the mountain called Cerro La Raya or Cerro Purgatory. The approximately 25 main buildings are made out of adobes, clay bricks dried in the sunlight, and were intended for different functions. Some were places of worship, others were nobles' mansions or priories. The construction of these buildings lasted for centuries. The Huajallarca, Big Pyramid, is the most important building. Its dimensions are impressive, 700 meters in length and 280 meters high. It is the Peru and Latin America largest adobe construction. Tombs, partially still intact and partially rebuilt as at the moment of their discovery, were very exciting to us. The proof of the funerary ritual shows, with no doubts, that the Moche society was strongly stratified, with well-defined political and religious roles. In 1987, Peru introduced to the world the most important archaeological finding in the recent past. After being buried for centuries in Sipan, the tomb of a great lord of the Moche civilization came to light thanks to the work of some Peruvian archaeologists that for the first time faced a non-violated tomb that showed the burial rites of one of the most important pre-Hispanic cultures in Peru. The Lord of Sipan, so called in honor of the city in which it was found, was buried in the 2nd century. The position of his body was studiousness chosen. The head south-faced, the eyes, the nose and mouth were covered with pieces and ornaments of gold. Women, children, llamas were sacrificed in his honor, and the best warriors came along with him in his afterlife journey to protect him. Sipan arises from the wiped-out Mochica language, and its nearest translation would be house or temple of the moon. Subsequently, the tombs of the old Lord of Sipan and the minister were discovered, and together with them, a large number of fellows and warriors. The Lord wore 3 pairs of golden earrings, turquoise studded. The main pair is adorned by a miniature painting of the Lord between 2 warriors. The Lord had also other jewels and ornaments that reflected his social position at the time. On both sides of the funerary room were found 1,300 pieces of pottery with foot remains. The enclosure was sealed with 16 carob beams and covered with earth and raw clay bricks. We can gather that the priests were designed to disclose the Moche cult and religious ritual, bearing in mind the opulence, the dresses and ornaments that were found in the grave. 2 necklaces made up of 9 pieces were also found, with human faces depicted on each one. In one of these, we can appreciate a face with the contracted mouth in an ostensible corpse grimace that personified the divinity associated with death, in contrast with the smiling faces of the other necklace, symbolizing life. It is more and more evident how much the ancient Andean civilizations are comparable, in terms of historic significance and greatness, to those commonly known, as well as the Egyptian, Mesopotamic, and Oriental civilizations. Finally, we can glimpse the vastness of the underway discoveries and the related need to rewrite in the future many new pages of South American history. No science fiction, but strong reality lying at the bottom of a great history to be brought to light, in a country that is only beginning its journey to rediscover an improvement of the past. The north of Peru has held many surprises, but perhaps at this stage we have several elements to go back to reinterpret or at least reconsider the aspects examined so far, which characterize the most famous towns in the south of this country. For this reason, to complete this framework of the past, we take back the Pan American Road after coming back to Lima by plane southbound. Along the endless desert areas on the Pacific with its high coastal sandy dunes. To the famous Nazca, famous in the world for the presence of mysterious desert lights. They are indelible signs visible only from the sky, oriented to the gods, to those who look at us from up there. This plateau, seen from the sky, are really enchanting and strange, not only for the presence of allegorical drawings, so clear and identifiable, but also for a series of endless lines that seem to show celestial routes and indications. Our mission has continued the investigation to the south of Paracas and Nazca. In particular, we have investigated the dolichocephalic skulls that belong to the Paracas civilization from 700 BC to 100 AC. With images of this type, we have more doubts than certainties. The skull's a stretched shape, because the head of newborn children was pressed with leather strings, which used to change its shape until it is abnormally stretched. The reason for this tradition, which could also lead children to death, has to be related to a belief of this far past population. Different iconographies show a god or a superior being that goes down on earth and hand the knowledge on man. This god, always depicted higher than common man, was characterized by a very stretched head. That's why the Paracas civilization was convinced that intelligence and knowledge depended on the shape of the skull. Who was this dolichocephalic god? We often think of ancient Egypt, where there are many dolichocephalic figures, and the head stretching was made on children's skulls. However, also between pre-Sumerian civilizations, there are drawings of dolichocephalic gods. In fact, this was supplied by many archaeological discoveries. Some scientists presuppose, verging on science fiction, that these beings were the survivors of some ancient and evolved civilization that disappeared because of great natural disasters. But why did these people, besides creating monumental drawing, heaven-oriented, adopted sophisticated medical and surgical techniques to change their distinguished features and their physical characteristics? Why did they oblige the children to withstand painful implants that changed the shape of the skull? Why did they attribute to their gods alien appearance? The most obvious answer are those considered to be more plausible: devotions and religious beliefs, their will to strike terrors into the enemy eyes. Contemplation of the stars for propitiatory purposes. It is fair that a little doubt remains. Deserts, volcanoes, and endless plains. The landscape deserves the right pictures. In the background, the prairie recalls those of the African savanna. On the road to the most famous towns of this country, we often eat on small, colorful bazaars, and it is impossible not to be caught for a souvenir or have something to take home. The most widely sold are the articles of clothing in alpaca and begonia wool that are widespread also among locals. The wool of these camelids is very appreciated for its quality, also thanks to the ability of the Peruvian masters weavers that obtain colorful and beautiful fabrics, costumes, and hats. Also, the pottery is very popular, strictly handmade. It keeps to the past graphical and artistic features. As happened to the Spanish conquistadores that faced these valleys on the road to the ancient heart of the Inca's empire, we run into an out-and-out ancient city model at an altitude of 3,500 meters, Rakchi. Maybe its pre-Hispanic name was Cacha. It was an important agricultural and religious center called Tambo. The most important building was the Temple of Huiracocha, still today imposing, even though partially collapsed. According to the historians, it was built by Viracocha as a tribute to a superior Inca god of the Andean population, Apu Conti Viracocha. Countless are the legends related to this place, probably destroyed by a sudden volcanic eruption. Actually, it was completely plundered by the greed of Spanish conquerors, who easily managed to get the leg up on the local population, welling out of the rich harvest and the treasures which converged here from all over the empire. Dozens of multiple buildings are still perfectly untouched. They had different uses: canchas, the apartments; vairanas, three-wall buildings; cocas, stores; several altars and spectacular sources of sacred water. All the system of channels and fountains is still perfectly working and visible. It was used to convey the sacred water that made these fields particularly fertile. Is an example, clearly visible and intact, of what the Incas meant by the city model. The relation between conquistadores and Incas was not always so destructive. In the case of the village of Chincheros, thanks to the brightness and to the far-sightedness of a noble Spanish governor, the colonial buildings were simply joined or overlapped to the originals. The effect is charming. Today, the perfect walls created by the Inca frame to the Hispanic landscape. The striking stone seats, still untouched, were reserved for the elders and local priests. The Council of the Elders decided the fate of the community, looking at the mountains and observing the stars. We inevitably approached the most known and renowned areas in Peru. We are now about to enter the legendary Sacred Valley of the Incas. As we have decided to do from the very beginning, we won't run upon the overknown Machu Picchu. We'd rather deepen the knowledge of some archaeological sites in the surroundings, wrongly considered less important. A bit because we like surprises, but also because now Peru has taught us not to take anything for granted. Without deviations on a side path, downstream, a few kilometers away from the main road, here is again something extraordinary and unthinkable. The terraces of Morai. A place that is worth visiting, surrounded by mystery, without necessarily knowing the doubts that still grip scientists and archaeologists about its purpose. There are many doubts about the sense of this structure, but it is not simple to have an answer. Sited a few kilometers from Cusco, surrounded by snow-capped impressive mountains, the complex is composed of systems of andenerías, enormous round terraces that seem to disappear, swallowed by 100 meters deep valley. Something magic is hidden in this place. Except from the shape, similar to that of an amphitheater. This system of concentric footholds that fill the deep can be seen only when you arrive on the edge of the valley. Leaving aside the many legends of this place, scientists believe that it was an Inca agricultural research center employed to experiment with crops on different altitudes. These lots, made on containing walls, filled with fertile land and irrigated by means of a complex system, allowed to grow more than 250 species of plants, thanks to the different microclimates of each terrace. Other scientific studies, however, suggest that it can be a kind of astronomical laboratory to study the seasons through sunlight and shadows on the surrounding mountains. No matter what it has been in reality, it is certainly something fascinating and extraordinary. Tourism has significantly changed the habits of the locals. They certainly know how to draw the attention of thousands of enthusiast foreigners visiting southern Peru each year. Any kind of cheap products and oddities. Here are a good deal is always round the corner, especially silver, of which this country is particularly rich. It is easy to run into high-level jewelry laboratories where precious stones and mother-of-pearl are hand-wrought and gem-set.
Y esta es la piedra sodalita, similar a la piedra lápiz lazuli, ¿no? Y esta también es la turquesa. Sí. Todos los trabajos se trabajan acá mismo.
Here we can really buy jewelry directly by the manufacturer, still warm. Silver is not the only gift of the subsoil. To an altitude that would never bode, attracted by an almost lunar landscape, we discover the abundance of a fundamental element for life and nutrition: salt. Sources that over the millennia were wisely exploited through an intricate system of terraces to extract this gift from the mountains. Water flows down the valley and slowly deposits its precious crystals, forming sheets that look like ice. Salt is not only used as such, but also constitutes a sort of unexpected tourist attraction that visitors seem to appreciate despite the unceasing wind that blows in these valleys. But the valley of the Urubamba River, so-called Sacred Valley of the Incas, still hides a mystery to be solved. Through alternative roads, we glimpse in all its splendor another imposing archaeological site: Ollantaytambo. It is located about 65 kilometers northwest of Cuzco. Consists of a series of stratified terraces, defended by enormous megalithic walls. It's a place that abounds with large blocks of stone in which niches, accurate in angles and perfect interior edges, were obtained. Some of the Ollantaytambo megaliths are among the most perfect of Peru. Curiously, one of those below has been repaired with pure quality stones and placed above highest quality megaliths. None, apart from the Inca, could make such precise repairs. Above the 45 terraces rises a mysterious building known as Temple of the Sun. This temple shows at these 6 huge monoliths, the greatest of which are 4 meters height. These boulders have unique characteristics, straight sides and unusual spacers that totally contrast with the joints and blunt-ended edges of other megalithic walls of Peru. We cannot know how the stones have been perfectly shaped, because they are obtained from red porphyry, a stone as hard as granite. The great mystery of Ollantaytambo is this: how could they have carried 6 boulders of more than 50 tons from the quarry located in Chichicata, 6.5 kilometers away, in the valley extending on the other side of the mountain? After having cut these stones, it would have been necessary to drop them down the mountain, cross the river, then get them back on the other side of the mountain to the construction site. It really seems an impossible task. The supporters of the push and pull theory point out that there are the remains of a ramp that goes back to the mountain, to Ollantaytambo, and also that many stones, the so-called tyrant stones, that never reach the top, are still there at the foot of the ramp. Unfortunately, these tests only explain why some stones have not reached the top, but they do not explain how, on the other hand, could those that are on the mountain. The laws of physics seem to stop any attempt of explanation. It is therefore not unlikely that the megalithic structures already existed before the Incas, and that the ramp and the tyrant stones represent the efforts of the Incas to emulate what they had found. According to the scientist Garcilaso de la Vega, one of the Inca emperors had seriously tried to strengthen its prestige, ordering 20,000 men to bring a stone on the mountain. The attempt ended up in a tragedy, and 1,000 people were killed when they were not able to control the huge stone. In 1996, a team of workers, despite guided by modern engineers with mechanical devices, has miserably failed. But the real mystery of this temple is its apparent lack of purpose. It does not seem to have been part of a building, since the area between those walls is made of crude rock. Maybe the intention was to build a huge, threatening military structure, but it is a wild goose chase in comparison with the practical utility. Moreover, the crest on which the rocks stand is too close for any strategic and practical use. Also, descriptions and symbols found are absolutely unique and not attributable to those typical of the area. The mystery deepens. According to scientists, this site, although not visited by tourists and media in comparison with the others, even Machu Picchu, offers many cues for thinking. We have probably failed to find the answers we were looking for. Actually, doubts and curiosities have been increasing. But we have certainly crossed the threshold of a new way to explore new unimaginable past realities of this great unknown country.